So, drums. If you record your own music, have a home recording setup, they are probably one of the more challenging bits to record, definitely the most expensive because it's often hard to do at home. Not all of us have a soundproof room, I certainly don't. I have recently recorded a new EP, and this time around I wanted to improve my drum setup, so I decided to go for a Glyn Johns method. Who is Glyn Johns? What is Glyn Johns? Very well regarded record producer who's been working since the 60s, if not before. Produced several Stones albums, Eagle albums, but most notably came to my attention because he produced Who's Next. Also, it is said that when he produced or helped engineer Led Zeppelin's debut album, that was when he came up with the first edition of what is known as the Glyn Johns drum mic setup. There's not a single technique. Obviously, he's been working for decades, so he will have varied it depending on the environment and the drummer he's working with. But the sort of classic setup that most people think about is as few as 3 microphones, sometimes 4. You have a drum in front of the kick. You have 2 overhead mics pointing down at the snare, and sometimes you have an additional mic close miking the snare drum. Now, that latter setup with the 4 drum mics is the variant that I used. That worked for me. I think one of the things was it suited my playing style. I tend to play with traditional grip, so I'm not whacking the snare as hard as some other rock drummers might. You may find that the snare drum mic is not necessary. The key thing for me was being able to do this on a budget because, like a lot of people who record their own music, I have very little budget and even less time. Now, I'm going to put one great big caveat on all of this, which is that what I'm recording is blues rock. This technique and the microphones that I've used will not give you a perfectly detailed hi-fi drum sound. Blues rock, it can get away with sounding a bit more garagey. If you play prog metal, then I'm sorry, you're going to need to invest in a much bigger array of drum mics for your drummer. So consider your genre before you take my advice to heart. Also to consider, I've got some prices for what I paid for the equipment that I used. You will find this varies. A lot of it can be picked up second-hand. Some of it I picked up second-hand. I'm a big fan of reusing and recycling. But I can't guarantee that you'll always get them at the same price, depending on where you are in the world. Obviously, exchange rates go up and down all the time, and just the cost of things may vary locally. Also, worth noting that what I'm recommending is what I used. I have not done an extensive shootout of all the budget drum mics. I looked up what was available, I did some research online to see what people were saying about these different models, and I bought them based on that and gave them a try. There are hundreds of other budget drum mics out there which will probably do a similar job. They might do a better job, they might do a worse job. If you've got other recommendations that are close to your heart, let me know. I'd love to hear them because I'm always up for improving my recording setup. So, what was I using? For the kick drum mic, one of these. This is a Superlux FK-2. I'd never heard of Superlux before I went and bought this. Some forums online seem to find these quite favourable. This one set me back about 40 quid. It's a dynamic mic which you can place very close to the kick drum, and it handles the low frequencies pretty well. Overhead mics. Pair of these. Yes, they're Behringer, and I know that Behringer draws some strong opinions. But I've been using Behringer mics for a while. I used a couple of C1s, which are large diaphragm condensers, to record acoustic guitars, and I was quite pleased with the results I got out of those. Better mics would probably do a better job, but I thought they were fine, especially given the price. The C2, the small diaphragm cousin, I guess, of the C1, comes as a matched pair. If you are looking to buy a pair of overhead mics, get a matched pair. It's not always easy to tell from the manufacturer's description how or if they're matched, but it's just an easy way to avoid getting weird phase issues when you have them basically pointing at the same source and running into separate channels. These set me back 39 quid for the pair. I got these from Anderton's. Again, reviews online suggest that For the money, they're very good. Some people point out that they are a bit harsh in the treble frequencies. For the budget I'm working on, I've been very pleased with these. And finally, the snare mic. Now, you might think this looks suspiciously like an SM57. Supposedly, it's a clone. This is the Chord IM07, even a suspiciously similar name. Much like the Shure, it's a dynamic mic, popular for pointing at snare drums, guitar cabs, and all sorts of other things, sometimes for vocals, I believe. I could be wrong. Some people don't like the tone of them that much, but I thought for pointing at a snare drum, this was fine. And finally, this was the most expensive single part that I had to upgrade. If you're working on a similar level to me, then you're probably familiar with something like a Focusrite Scarlett. I had previously done everything on a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. The trouble was that, as pleased as I was with that, it only had 2 mic preamps, 2 inputs. And as I've just shown you, I've got 4 microphones. So I needed to upgrade to something which had at least 4 inputs. I got quite lucky, and I managed to find one of these. This is the Steinberg UR44. I had not used Steinberg before. Reviews were very favourable. And this solved all my problems at once, because if you look closely here, there are, no, you can't see in that light, there are 4 inputs. And that's just at the front. There are a couple more line inputs at the back, but I've not really used those so far. But most importantly, 4 mic preamps. But these preamps, they are Yamaha D series preamp, I believe. Also useful is that the phantom power is switchable between banks of preamps. So you can have 2 on, 2 off, or 4 on, or 4 off. This was secondhand. Got quite lucky to find this on eBay. In the end, set me back about 130 quid. So far, I consider it a bit of a bargain. And like I said at the start of this, prices may vary. These may be hard to come by, but if you're prepared to look beyond some of the better-known names like Focusrite and Universal Audio, then you might be able to find something pretty decent with 4 mic inputs. Hopefully south of 200 quid. So, 2 final things that you'll need. And this is where it gets a bit trickier, because it depends what's available to you locally or what you might have at home. You need a drum kit. No shit, Sherlock. And a room to play it in. With a little local research, I was quite fortunate. Obviously, studios with properly treated rooms would be the best solution, but then if you're in a studio like that anyway, you may as well use their equipment to record the drums. However, a rehearsal room with a reasonably good drum kit will do. Fortunately, I found a rehearsal room which had decent soundproofing and a kit that wasn't being held together by gaffer tape. In fact, the guy I hired the studio from actually had a nicer crash than me, so he didn't mind me borrowing his. And the room was soundproofed, which, is different from being properly acoustically treated. But, it was quite clear from a couple of early test recordings, once I got the mics in place, that the room was dead enough that I could work with the sound. So, how does it sound? I will invite you to come and listen to a sample with the link that should be appearing in this corner now. Click through to that and see what you think. Like I say, it's not going to be the most hi-fi drum sound you've ever heard, but for something that I managed to record on a shoestring budget, I'm reasonably pleased with it. It's definitely an improvement on what I was doing previously. For the album I released before this EP, I went ahead with my little 2-input Focusrite, and I just put 2 condensers over the top of the kit. And it worked, but it was a lot harder when I was mixing to capture the drum sound and make it come through the mix in a satisfying way. With this, I found the mix much easier. So much easier, in fact. I'm sure there will be plenty of producers and recording engineers who are wanting to claw their eyes out from watching this video because I'm doing it all horribly wrong, or they hate the microphones I've chosen. There will be reasons. So tell me what I'm doing wrong. But, you know, try to be constructive, even if you think it's the worst thing you've ever heard. I'm always keen to learn, so I will invite you to let rip in the comments. On the other hand, if you've enjoyed the track, then you can get some free music by clicking the link in the description and joining our mailing list. Or at the very least, hit subscribe. And yes, thank you for watching.